Chapter 9. The Body in the Morgue. The second meeting began. I looked around the smoke-filled room. The Wilcox lawyers appeared smug and confident. My lawyers looked exhausted. My mind began wandering again. I was no longer paying attention to anything that was being said. I just kept repeating the name Giles Duxbury in my head. My secretary poked her head through the door. I had an urgent call. I excused myself. It was my wife. "My father just called," she said. "He and Lars are at the Grove Street morgue. Dad said the landlady who lived above Dixie's bar was there. She's dead." I hung up. I re-entered the boardroom. "Listen, gentlemen." I took a piece of paper and scribbled a number. "This is my best and final offer. Take it or leave it." I shoved the paper across the table at one of the Wilcox lawyers. "Is this a joke?" he said, looking at the number. "I'm sorry, gentlemen." I put on my coat and hat. "Our offer to buy the Wilcox steel mill has now been withdrawn. We are no longer interested in buying it. Good day." I raced to the Grove Street morgue and spotted Lars and my father-in-law. They were standing on the sidewalk. I honked and waved them over. "Her name was Maud Rosen," said Lars. "Are you sure she was the same woman who we spoke to on Tuesday night?" I asked. "Yes." "How did she die?" "We don't know," said my father-in-law. "They haven't done her autopsy yet." "Does it look like she was murdered?" "We couldn't tell," said Lars. "We only saw her face. The rest of her was covered up." "Was Duxbury there?" "No," said my father-in-law. "We checked all the unclaimed stiffs, John Doe photographs, and looked through the desk book. Duxbury was never there." "What should we do now?" I asked. "You and your brother need to go to the Cambridge Street precinct and tell someone important there everything you know. I suggest you ride together and get your story straight." "We'll meet you there, Dad," I said. Lars got into my car. I waited until my father-in-law pulled past us, and then I followed him. "That poor woman was killed because of us," said Lars. "We don't know that for sure, Lars. She was old. She might have just died from natural causes." "We prodded her into action, and because of it she was murdered." "We had no way of knowing that Duxbury might be mixed up in anything." "Oakes is right. We better figure out what we're going to tell the police. They're going to want to know why we were knocking on Maud Rosen's door the night before she was found dead." "I suggest we tell them the truth." "I doubt they'll believe it. Anything else we tell them will sound just as absurd." "Why aren't you at your meeting?" "I withdrew the offer." "So, we're not buying the steel mill?" "Not any more." "Why?" "I just didn't like the look on their lawyers' faces." "Well, you know best, Loris. I trust your instincts." My father-in-law parked near the station and got out of the car. I pulled alongside him. "Dad," I said, "get in. We need to talk this over before we speak to the police." My father-in-law got into the back. I sped away. "It's possible that Maud Rosen died because she was asking around about Giles Duxbury," I said. "The person who murdered her might also know that you and Lars were also asking about him. And I was flashing his damn mugshot around West Boston all day yesterday. Did you tell people that you were a police detective?" "I never identified myself as a cop, but I played it like I was." "When you spoke to the men at the Cambridge Street precinct, did you tell them that you were retired?" "My nephew Michael Shea works there. He introduced me as Detective Sergeant Oakes from the South Dedham Police Department. I never mentioned anything to anyone about being retired." "Do you trust your nephew?" "Mike? Oh, of course. He's my little sister Agnes's kid. I helped him get into the Boston Police Department." "Is he working today?" "I would assume so." "Do you know where we might find him?" "I assume he'd be somewhere on the west side." "Maybe he knows how Maud Rosen died." I turned around and began driving back to West Boston. My father-in-law leaned forward. "You two have to level with me," he said. "Why were you really looking for Giles Duxbury?" "I wanted to help him," said Lars. "Now, I fear that we might be the ones who need help."